It was one of those soft Carolina mornings when the mist still clings to the azaleas and the pool water looks like polished onyx, and I was standing at the gate with the key in one hand and my grandson's tiny swim trunks in the other when the patrol car rolled up, lights spinning like Christmas in July. "Mrs. Whitfield," Officer Ramirez said, climbing out with that apologetic half-smile cops wear when they wish they were anywhere else. "We've had a complaint you're denying residents access." My heart didn't race at 71. It prefers to stroll, but it did take one deliberate step forward, because I recognized the lavender perfume drifting from the sidewalk behind him, the same scent that had haunted every HOA meeting for the past 6 years. "Morning, Ramirez," I said, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't shake. "You tell Brenda Kinsley I'm not denying access. I'm enforcing the bylaws she insisted we pass." Inside my chest, a quieter voice whispered, "You promised Ellie you'd keep the pool safe for the great-grandbabies she'll never meet." I swallowed that voice like warm coffee and waited. I'd moved to Willow Creek Estates the year after Hank passed, trading our drafty farmhouse for a tidy brick ranch 2 blocks from the mail, kiosk, and 1 block from the pool. Hank and I had dreamed about every August for 40 years. We pictured our grandkids cannonballing at sunset while we sat in Adirondacks, lemonade sweating between our palms. Hank never made it that far. The Big C took him before the first coat of pool plaster dried. So when the HOA elected Brenda Kinsley president tighter smile, I told myself she was just protective of property values. I even voted for her. Turns out, what she was protecting was her own reflection in every shiny surface she could control. First came the color palette. No flower pots, except coastal neutrals. Then the mailbox decree. Black numbers, 3 inches tall, serif font only. Each rule arrived in a pastel flyer folded like an invitation to a party no one wanted. But the pool rules, that's where Brenda became a monarch. She pushed through a resolution that every guest, every single grandbaby, neighbor's nephew, or visiting cousin had to be pre-registered on an HOA portal, $10 per day, per wristband. $10 so a 3-year-old could splash for an hour. "For insurance," Brenda said, blinking innocent as a Sunday school teacher. I paid it the first summer, I paid it the second. Then Ellie's twins turned 2 and I did the math, $40 every time they toddled over in floaties. I pictured Hank's old tackle box upstairs, the one stuffed with coins we saved for our someday pool, and something inside me snapped like a dried rubber band. So, I read the bylaws, every comma, every subclause, every dusty amendment since 1994. Took me 3 weeks and 2 bottles of store-brand eye drops, but I found it. Article 14(b). The pool, the tennis court, and the clubhouse were deeded to the homeowners collectively. Yes, but the original developer had reserved a single key, 1 brass slug marked Master, for the lot that sat directly adjacent. Our lot. Hank and I had laughed about the useless key to nowhere in our closing papers, but there it was in black ink. The original owner of Lot 17 retained first right of physical access. Brenda had stapled amendments over it like wallpaper, but you can't amend away a deed covenant unless every single homeowner votes, and they'd never done that. I had the law. I had the key. And I had the memory of Hank hoisting me into that same pool the night before chemo took his hair, whispering, "Our someday is still tomorrow, Ruth." I decided tomorrow had arrived. I waited until the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend, when Brenda held her annual Welcome to Summer potluck by the deep end. She'd commandeered the grill, the picnic tables, even the shade of the crepe myrtle, like a general planting flags. I arrived early with a tray of deviled eggs and a smile sweet enough to frost cupcakes. While Brenda circulated with her clipboard, ticking off attendance like a school marm, I slipped behind the pump house and switched the keypad to manual override. The gate that had once beeped for fobs now answered only to my old brass key. Simple, legal, and for Brenda, absolutely maddening. 10 minutes later, she was tapping her kitten heel at my lounge chair. "Ruth, dear, the gate's broken. Could you call your grandson to let everyone in?" I shaded my eyes with one hand. "It's not broken, Brenda. It's operating exactly as the covenant allows. My key, my discretion." Her lips thinned into a pink paper cut. "We'll discuss this at the next meeting." Looking forward to it, I said, and bit into a deviled egg like it was the last cookie on earth. She called the meeting for the following Tuesday closed session. Members only. I wore the same navy dress I'd worn to Hank's funeral, because sometimes fabric remembers what skin can't. Brenda opened with a slideshow titled Restoring Community Equity, featuring a photo of my key photoshopped next to a cartoon dragon labeled Exclusion. She proposed revoking my special privilege, fining me $500 for unneighborly behavior, and her pièce de résistance banning any homeowner from bringing more than one guest per month. Gasps rustled the room like dry magnolia leaves. I let the silence stretch until even the ceiling fan sounded embarrassed. Then I stood. Smoothing the skirt Hank used to tease made me look like a battleship in full sail. Before we vote, I said, I'd like to read something. I unfolded the deed covenant, the county registrar's stamp still crisp. I read slowly, letting every whereas and thereunto sink in like summer rain. Brenda's face went from porcelain to persimmon. When I finished, I slid a second paper across the table. A formal request for a special assessment signed by 42 of the 58 homeowners to install a second gate on the opposite fence. Funded entirely by the HOA reserve Brenda had been hoarding for future amenities like a pergola nobody asked for. She sputtered something about fiscal responsibility, but the tide had turned. The vote failed 46-12. Brenda slammed her gavel so hard the plastic head flew off and skittered under the folding table like a guilty mouse. I thought that would be the end, honor satisfied, balance restored. But Brenda wasn't finished. The next Saturday, while I clipped roses by the mailbox, she marched up flanked by 2 board members with cell phones raised like scout binoculars. Mrs. Whitfield, she announced, as of this morning, the board has invoked Emergency Rule 7C, authorizing immediate suspension of any covenant deemed hazardous to community welfare. Hand over the key. I could feel the neighbors' curtains twitching, smell the gossip brewing like sweet tea left too long in the sun. My pulse thumped behind my ears, steady as a snare drum. You'll need a judge to overturn a deed, Brenda. And you'll need more than a selfie to get one. She pivoted, hairspray clouds sparkling in the sunlight, and dialed the non-emergency police line right there on my driveway. We have a resident refusing lawful access to common facilities, she said, loud enough for the entire cul-de-sac to hear. I watched her perform, and I felt something colder than anger settle in my ribs. Pity, because I knew what was coming next. Officer Ramirez arrived within minutes. He greeted me like an old friend he'd once helped change my flat tire when Ellie was in labor, and then he asked to see the paperwork. Brenda presented her emergency rule, printed on lavender letterhead. I handed him the deed, stapled to a 3-page legal brief prepared by the sweetest young paralegal you ever met, my granddaughter Lucy. The real surprise came 2 weeks later. I was watering the roses when a sleek sedan pulled up, and a woman in a linen suit stepped out, new HOA president. Elected by a landslide, she carried a small velvet box like she was proposing. Inside lay a brand new key on a brass ring, engraved with the words, Community Trust. She asked if I'd serve as pool ambassador. Honorary title, no fee. Just keep doing what I'd been doing. Welcoming neighbors. Sharing memories. Making sure no one ever had to pay $10 to see a child smile. I laughed so hard I had to sit on the curb. That was last month. Yesterday I watched Ellie's twins toddle across the wet concrete, shrieking as their daddy tossed them like giggling footballs. I sat in the same Adirondack Hank, and I once pictured lemonade sweating between my palms, and I felt him beside me as real as the sun on my shoulders. So if you hear about the Willow Creek pool feud, remember, sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's a brass key, a stack of bylaws, and a promise to a man who never got his someday. Now, before you scroll to the next drama, tap that like button if you believe memory should never come with a cover charge, and share this with someone who's fought their own small-town dragon. Midway through this tale, I asked myself, what would you have paid to keep your grandbabies laughing in the water? And here's another thought. If your HOA knocked tomorrow, would you know which papers to pull from the drawer? Drop your answers below. I read every single one, and so do the neighbors who still blush when they see me coming. And if you're in the mood for more porch swing storytelling, hit subscribe next week. I'll tell you how Mrs. Delgado's flan ended up saving the 4th of July parade.